Hello and welcome to ET Auto Startup Adda. This is yet another Tuesday afternoon, and I'm back to you with another set of innovators and investors who are going to show you the path to the future of mobility industry and how does the future entrepreneurship look like. So today I'm joined by Mr. Praful Chandra, founder and CEO of Coin Earth. Coin Earth is the startup that we are going to talk about. Coin Earth is a startup that works in a new concept that is called vehicle passport. We'll understand from them what does vehicle passport mean. It is basically AI ML based, technology firm that is trying to revolutionize the automobile industry in terms of after sales, insurance, and a lot of data that will come out that will help in the aftermarket space. We are also joined by the investor in this startup, Mr. Rutvik Doshi, Managing Director and General Partners, Investors Capital Partners. And we are also joined by the product head of Coin Earth, Mr. Deep Chenna, Chief Product Officer. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining ET Auto Startup Adda. Before I begin, let me invite first of all the investors. Why did Ritwik or his company thought of investing in this startup, which is a completely new area where it is working? The startup is working. So, what really encouraged or impressed the investors India to invest in this company? Ritwik, over to you.
Good to speak with everybody. So, roughly, let me give a brief background as to what we saw in CoinEarth and why we kind of chose to invest in it. So, we are early stage investors. We are a venture capital firm which invests in companies which are fairly early on in their journey in emerging technologies. So, we what we try to do is we try to estimate, okay, a few years down the line, what are the kind of technologies, what are the kind of products will become mainstream, which will become usable by a large majority of the population. And with that assumption and with that estimate, we try and invest in startups. So when we met Praful and the CoinEarth team, we saw something similar. They were building a platform on top of blockchain. Blockchain till date was largely used for, or is the backend platform on top of which all the cryptocurrencies today are running, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. But the underlying technology, which is blockchain, is actually independent of cryptocurrency or anything. It's more like a distributed ledger or something which allows you to share information across multiple entities, across multiple parties. And we, at least within our firm, firmly believed that this technology is going to have many more applications in the future. So when we met Koinath and Praful, we saw them that they had taken this in a new platform of blockchain, applied it across a variety of use cases, and in particular the automobile related industry. So if you think of an automobile as a industry, there are always multiple players involved within an automobile, in the journey of an automobile car, starting from suppliers who end up providing parts to build the automobile, the manufacturer who gets the automobile ready, the dealers who actually eventually sell the vehicle, the buyer who buys it. The buyer then gets the vehicle serviced at a variety of different places. Different components may get changed over its lifetime, then eventually sells the car in the used car market. It changes hands. So lots of different players are involved in the life cycle of that automobile. And in terms of capturing that data as to who is doing what is relevant, what is not relevant, you need a central, you can either have a central authority like a government do it, or you could have a distributed system like a blockchain, which is not owned by anybody, but all of us can trust into it. And that's the vision
Quick,
with which they came in. Yeah.
may I intervene, please?
Yeah.
I very nicely explained the concept of the product. Also, you also said why you invested briefly.
Yeah.
Before we get into, because for the in the interest of the audience, because they get the clarity, I'll just bring in Raful or the product guy who has been working on this, like Deep Chenna, what is in this that is going to revolutionize the automobile industry, or how do you see, what are the key driver or trigger that really encouraged you to be part of this startup team, and what are the key elements that you think will redefine the automobile space, Deep?
Hey, thanks, Nabel. Okay, so like Rutvik has set a very good, overview of what we are trying to do, right? We as a company believe we are transitioning from information era where information is a key driving factor so far to a new digital era where trust is also equally important along with the information. There's a new trend you have seen in many places where trust and experience has been given more weightage by the end consumer, where they're more data driven, more information driven these days. So that's where, right, we came with a product which the vehicle digital passport, which gives you a trusted way to share the information with multiple parties in the ecosystem, right? Like Ritu said, yes, we can do it with central authority, but it's much more reasonable and also much more efficient if we do it with a decentralized ledger, like what a Coiner's product Marketsen offers, right? Marketsen is a blockchain based platform framework. It's ready to use. Okay, we have layers of technology under the hood which will be abstracted out and bringing the right ready to use cases to enterprises. Okay, vehicle digital passport is such a use case where people can straightly plug in and get it going, right? That's what we are doing with MG as a partner, right, for the new product. So now with the vehicle digital passport being on a shared ledger, so there are a lot of direct and indirect benefits, right? What you can write pretty much anything. Who can write? Anybody in the network can write it, right? And everything is digitally signed as well as timestamped and immutable. What the mean is it's trustworthy, right? Every information that is shown on a
No,
passport
basic. Can you
is
give
really
me basic?
trustworthy.
Deep, can you give me basic idea as a OEM? What are the advantage they are going to get by using your technology? What are you
Yes.
offering? And also in a straight layman language for a consumer, how does it change? Or the stakeholders, how does it change? How does it help?
Great. So coming to the benefits, right? After you have done, like, why you do this, right? So there are direct benefits. Like to the end consumer, what we have seen is insurance companies are ready to offer a better price usage based insurance, right? If you share your data, that how you driven your car in last 1 year based on your driving behavior, if you are a safe driver, we would like to give you better price. Like we have seen, they're offering up to 15% reduced premium, right, for the safe driver, and it can grow as well. So that's one direct benefit, and also secondary marketplace. So the car with more data, right, with all the information that was, example, you are selling a car after 4 years. If somebody willing to buy a car, if you able to share all the history of the data, how you timely serviced it, how you maintain your car, how you drove your car, that gives you more
Deep, I
value,
would
right? People
just
will be easily make
just a
choice.
second. I think Praful is waiting in the off stage area. I would request my team if they can let him in so that we can hear his thought also on the usability. You can go ahead, Deep.
Right. Yeah. So those are two direct, benefits to consumer, right? Let's say what are the benefits for OEM, right? For OEM, much more efficient, right? First of all, they can create a great brand value by being transparent company as well as sharing the information to the other parties, right? And also they can bring up new business models, right? Where if there is a new subscription business model, they can come up with, there's a revenue sharing, so you can bring new business models in a very efficient way, right? So if the multiple parties in the ecosystem are able to coordinate very easily, efficiently, so nothing like that. So for OEMs, that, and also it could be a value added service for their customers, right? So it will be driving more purchase patterns, and they say that we care about the customers, we care about the data, and it also involves privacy. Now it's a user consent based data sharing. It's not like we share the data with everyone, right? The consent is stored on the blockchain, and that is protected. Your data is protected as well as on your choice you can share with other parties. So it's more to the customer orientedness for the companies like OEMs, right? So that's about direct benefits. If you talk about indirect benefits, where it can drive the user driving behavior, timely feedbacks, right? So now, based on last 1 week's driving patterns, so we get a feedback saying that okay, this is where you can improve your driving. So it will improve the consumer driving behaviors as well, so that the car maintenance and everything. So if we can talk more about it, and if it comes to service providers, so they can service the car with more information behind it. So how the car was driven, what kind of services are required, is there anything that parts needs to be replaced and everything, right? Because these are two different usually organizations, right? Maybe partnered together. So now they know all car data. So when the car comes for service, they know what can be, so targeted, like what is the key things that they need to service in next service, right? And also, so many things, right? Now that we have the data sitting in multiple places, data silos, so we are all bringing in into one place and creating a more meaningful use cases around it. Yeah, that's briefly
Deep, so
about what
what is your revenue model?
revenue model for us or for OEMs. Okay, so
For
here
you?
it could be I can. So it would be usage based model. Okay, that's a very common pattern. So it's like for per passport we can have a priced, right, for every passport and per year. So that's a different. I mean, that's based on how things play around and what are the kind of value propositions that passport is being used for, right? And in cases OEMs can also offer it as a value added service, right? So it's not only that they could offer it for free, also it can be a premium service that they can offer for only expensive cars, or they charge extra and anything, right? So in general, it will be a revenue model between partners like OEMs and us, and between OEMs and the consumers, that's their choice of how they wanted to utilize this. Yeah.
So, if I talk about your product, is data going to be your product? What is your product that is going to you are going to provide to your customer in layman's language?
Uh, Data is theirs. We never own the data in this platform, right? We are not aggregators. We are a platform providers. So in this whole platform, every partner own their own data. So we never be the aggregator who maintains, keeps the all everybody's data in one central location. Okay, the shared ledger. When I say shared ledger, there are different nodes hosted by different parties in the network, and everybody own the data. At the same time, everybody not only own the data but also protected with the user privacy, right? So they store the user consent when to capture this data, so the data won't come into platform without users choice here, right? So nobody in this case, it's we are not the data providers or data aggregators, we are platform providers, right? We provide a platform for these kind of ecosystems to share data in a secured manner and trusted manner.
Thank you, Deep. I'll come to you, Rutvik, and understand from you what kind of vision do you have with this investment? How do you see the advantage coming your way with the investment in this company? What's your outlook for this?
No, so we come in with a very long-term horizon. So our horizons are at least 7 to 8 years long. And so the way we think is that over the next 7, 8 years, this platform will start being used by various OEMs, insurance providers, car service providers, car owners, used cars dealers, etc. And once you have a large network of various things going in, it it creates what is known as a network effect. And in a network effect scenario, the utility of this platform becomes very, very critical and crucial to everybody. And that in return, from an investment perspective, creates significant value for uh, investors. So if you look at today's some of the most valuable companies, like either be it Uber or be it like Zomato, they're all network effect based companies. They bring in multiple players and multiple uh, stakeholders into a single platform and provides benefit to everybody. And that's the vision that we have for CoinEarth also, that eventually it will become a platform where all these multiple players come in specifically in the auto segment. And once that happens, it creates positive network effects, which in turn yields to very high valuation and very high revenue for a company. And that's the vision with which we come in. So that's our initial investment has gone in largely to help them build the product and then execute towards realizing this vision.
Thank you. I'll just go to Praful if he has joined. We are trying to connect with him, but there seems to be some technical glitch. I'll request my team to connect me to Praful if it is possible. If we can bring him on stage. Praful Chandra, can we connect with him? Yeah.
Hi, Nabil.
Hi, Praful. Thank you so much. I understand that there is some technical glitch because of which you were not able to join initially. Just want to understand how did the idea of this startup came, and what is your long-term target with this startup? What kind of market opportunity you see here?
Right. So thanks, Nabil, first of all, for having me on the show. The startup, the of the idea was born with two basic fundamental beliefs. One was that as data becomes more and more important for companies as they move forward, the true value of the data will be realized only when there is a secure mechanism, a private mechanism for companies to share data with each other while still respecting the privacy laws of the country. Right? That was one fundamental hypothesis that we kind of built the company out on. We saw this as a pattern in supply chains. We saw this as a pattern in the relationship between auto manufacturers and insurance companies. We saw this as a pattern when a product came up for resale in the market. Very well known problem in the automotive segment called the lemon problem, where the secondary buyer is not able to distinguish between a good car and a bad car. And that is the fundamentally a data problem because this data is, of course, available, but it is not easily available and shareable. So that was one of the key fundamental hypotheses that how do we enable a group of companies to securely, privately share data while still requiring respecting privacy. Whether it's the product passport use case, whether it's another supply chain use case or another value chain use case, this is the fundamental belief. And as Rutvik mentioned, the long-term view of this is that the true value of data gets realizable only when it can be shared across multiple entities, creating a 1+1 greater than 2 effect.
Praful, how do you ensure the data privacy? What are the measures are you taking?
So there are several ways we do it. So we have a three-layered architecture in terms of security and privacy, right? So at the bottommost layer, we build on blockchain technology, which has got to do more with auditability and non-repudiation, right? Those are the more important constructs in blockchain. On top of that, we have a construct of what we call configurable decentralization, which means that you can have a network with a single node, in which case it virtually acts like a centralized system, or you can have a system with 2 nodes or 5 nodes, and that starts to decentralize while still trading off some privacy. And the third layer is even within the organization, we have an access control list. So even though the construct is multiple companies coming together and sharing data with each other, we do recognize that even within the company, certain roles need some kind of data and certain roles need another kind of data. And that is the more traditional access control mechanism. And the last layer is that we differentiate between data owner and data custodian, right? So OEMs, for example, Maruti, I see Mr. Shashank is here. If they are storing data from the car, they are the data custodian, right? They're not the data owner of the vehicle. That is still the vehicle owner. By paying careful attention to who's the custodian, who's the owner, and whose consent should be taken for what, that's how we kind of ensure privacy with a multi-tier architecture.
Praful, one last question. Can you share your journey so far? How did you land up in this startup? What were you doing before that? If you could briefly share your
Sure. So
journey so
before I
far.
came here, yeah. So before I started this 2017, and Rutvik and me met almost 3.5, 4 years ago, when and they were the first investors in the company. Before that, I was at Texas Instruments and Hewlett Packard. I spent about 17 years between these two companies in Texas Instruments and Hewlett Packard. And prior to that, I had a couple of stints in Infosys and Lucent. So, born and brought up in the technology field after graduation, and that's where I have kind of lived my life.
Thank you, Praful and Ritvik and Deep. Now I'll go to our expert for the day, Mr. Sushant Srivastava, Senior Executive Director, Maruti Suzuki. You are an automotive veteran and you have seen sales and service side for India's largest car company, and these guys are trying to help you guys in many ways. How do you see this startup? What's your thought on this? How will you rate them? And if you
Yeah,
have any
so
questions, you can ask. Yeah.
yeah, so I think it's a great idea which they are trying to basically develop. It's going to be extremely good for a group of enterprises for what we call cross enterprise collaboration. So I think that is something which is still a very new idea. Although I think the efficacy will come of the platform will come once you have enough data available. And as I think Ritvik mentioned that term called network. What is that? That is the network efficiency, which comes in once you have enough people joining in this type of collaboration. So I think
Network effect.
the number of yeah, what was that?
Network
So I
effect.
said network
Network
effects.
network effect. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So we are a little far away from it at the moment, but I think when I look at their talk, their presentation, I feel the idea is great, and it has got a lot of positive things which can come for auto OEMs. I can say from an auto perspective, uh, whether it's relating to inventory financing or whether it's relating to, in fact, inventory visibility, for example, or even contract enforcement. You have insurance is another area, but I was a little just concerned with the data privacy part. So while Maruti Suzuki also has a lot of data, we are now working on what we call the SVOC, a single view of customer, which is we integrate transactional and interactional data into a single view of customer, which enables us to actually do even some sort of a predictive modeling on consumer behavior, uh, that sort of thing. And what these people are doing, probably using that NFT for with that digital ledgers, which is the basis of blockchain transaction. Extremely good for used cars, extremely good for insurance, extremely good for even design of vehicles, I would say, at some stage, because I can imagine a lot of data points which can be used. So I also see lower operating cost if it is possible to have this cross enterprise collaboration, probably much more agility in the supply chain. So on the data security part, although I think it was explained by Deep or I don't, I think uh, Rutvik or somebody's explained how data security at three levels is being. But I am a little worried on that point. So I'm sure when this startup, when they are getting into this type of thing, there would be a sense of this fear amongst the collaborators, the cross enterprise collaboration that we are talking about, because we are sometimes maybe not, we are just a custodian, although not the owner, as was mentioned. So how do you make that foolproof is still something which I'm not very convinced about. So idea is great, we would like to invest for example in this thing, but we need to be sure about the data. And as Maruti Suzuki, I can tell you we have more data than we have more customers and therefore more data than most. So for us, it is something which we are very very possessive of, the data itself, even though we are not the owner, but certainly the custodian. So how do you ensure that is my first question. Even though you explained in some terms about those three levels of security, I'm not so convinced actually. But on the idea part, I'll rate you as 9 out of 10. So that's going to be a great application for all OEMs.
So I
Yeah,
think I'll
please.
take that. Okay. So yes, yeah. These days you cannot talk data and privacy as two different terms. Wherever there is a data, we always have to talk about privacy. That has been a recent in any industry. If you talk, if you're talking about data, we should make sure what's the privacy of it, who owns this data, and who has a right over this data to use it, right? So that been a very hard debate when we are coming to when we propose any
No,
kind of a
Deep,
solution
that
in this
that
shared life.
too we understand data privacy is very important. Can you share some of these
Yes.
specifics? How are you
Yeah.
going to ensure that? That's what Shashank San
Yeah.
wants to understand.
Exactly. Coming there, right? So in this, the primary thing is user consent is where the whole journey starts. We don't put, I mean, MG won't be putting the data. Service providers won't be, uploading the service information into shared ledger. The journey starts with user agreeing to the terms, saying that I'm okay to publish this data on a shared ledger, so that in future I can share this data to some other partners in the network, so that I can get some benefits of it, right? At beginning itself, he has a full right to not to choose, right? There's a key thing that we have covered in a whole data privacy. So the whole journey won't start for passport. So once he has given the consent, saying that that's where the ledger, the data goes to ledger, and now he has a further control on whom to share in the network itself. There could be 10 parties in the network. I would say, okay, only these two parties in the network have access to my passport data, not anybody else, right? That's when the other party can access this data, otherwise they cannot access. So me it's based on how you may want to choose to share with only insurance provider if he wants to get the premium insurance, but he may not want to choose to resale no car or some kind of a secondary marketplace because he's not willing to sell the car anytime soon, right? The whole control is in still everywhere. It's in the user's control, right? How we operate this data, how we let the other partners access this data. And also we have given where he can say unshare as well. Let's say I don't want to share data anymore with any of these partners, right? So he can in fact archive this information or anything. So overall we have given the whole control to user. That's where we are protecting the privacy, right? It's based on his decision. Yeah.
Okay, isn't that a standard practice already across? So what is unique in it? Yes, Shashank San, your question. I just mic
Yes,
was.
actually, I listened to this explanation from Deep. We do a lot of data, and of course, we understand the ownership lies with the consumer. For example, I have a Suzuki Connect where we have a lot of data about the usage of the cars, how many times you are braking. It can be very useful. How much time you are speeding. What is the driving driver's behavior of driving, and so on and so forth. So we have a lot of that information.
Right.
It can be actually very useful to many people, including to us for designing our products. Or but we are not using it as on an individual basis, in the sense that this data, it's not as if of course I collect data from Deep, I collect it from Rutvik, I collect it from Nabil, I collect it from Shashank, but then I form a cohort and say that this type of people have this type of driving behavior. I cannot really pinpoint on one specific individual. So it is personalized not to the individual self, but personalized on some parameters of the cohort which I will form, which actually determines maybe the insurance rates at some later stage, or the type of maintenance that the car requires, and so on. So I'm not sure whether taking that individual okay from consumer is good enough security for the enterprise point of view. And I'm saying, of course, if you have ethical enterprises, it's probably okay. But what happens if it can be
Mhm.
misused? And that, I think, may be a difficult to pinpoint at a later stage. Should, in this cross enterprise collaboration, one of the enterprises uses it in a way which is different, and that is something which I'm not able to still figure out. Deep, I'm sorry, despite your explanation.
Understand. So this is not a simple problem to solve, right? I could come up with another scenario where we are working with a different use case completely. There we choose to make it anonymous, right? We disconnected the personal information with the actual data, right? So there the information can be shared, but It's an anonymous information. We know there are 10 people drove this car and this is a behavior, but by removing the personal data, demographic data, we make it more anonymous. So that's another strategy we are following, and it absolutely depends on the kind of value propositions or use cases we wanted to enable. Right? In some
Yeah.
cases, yes, it is possible to remove the private information of the consumer, just share the enough data and make it anonymous.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. I think that's the part which probably needs a lot of attention. Anyway, but our idea is
Yes.
great, and I think it's got a lot of application. And you guys can actually approach OEMs and give different case possibilities. And I think uh, just by this 10-15 minutes of listening to you, I can make out that there are a huge number of applications from a OEM perspective. So I wish you guys all the very best, and I think if this idea is going to apply not just for automobile, it's going to be great for any cross enterprise collaboration on data.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
we have other offerings. I Since it is a not context, we are not bringing it up. We have a supply chain offering. We have invoice financing offering. The under the hood, the fact is there's a trusted ledger, right, which would
yeah,
enable people to
yeah,
coordinate in more
yeah,
efficient manner, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. And I think these days with the supply chain, globally, actually, and when you have enterprises working across continents, this deeper supply chain integration is actually going to be very good. I can
Yes.
surely say it
Yeah.
from any enterprise which has supply chain as a real big backbone. Most of enterprises are like that in auto field. So I think that is also a very good
Yeah.
possibility. Very good possibility.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We have deployed production use cases for supply chain where there's a deep, inventory visibility in a deeper supply chains. Also, there are cases where contract manufacturing, right? You need to manage inventory across different organizations inside your supply chain. Right? There are
Yeah.
kind of value proposition could be different, but under the hood, the fact that you can coordinate and have a single source of truth is something. And also now it enables a lot of SLAs to be automated. We are doing
Hmm.
contract automation, enforcement as automated, right? We can Penalties and bonuses are automated on the platform in one of the use case based on the single source of truth data, right? So
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
lays the fundamental platform for
Hmm.
more interesting solutions.
Absolutely, Deep. And as you talk, I can make out one of the big problems which we found when for inventory financing by banks. So the amount of financing which bank has done has to be backed with the inventory. So if the inventory is there, it's fine because that's sort of a collateral. But many times, the vehicle gets sold.
Yes.
It's not updated. It's not updated because there is no blockchain. There is no ledger which makes that
Mm.
addition subtraction and keeps it perfectly balanced, with the result that banks sometimes find that there is
Mm.
diversion of funds, and that has happened in with many of our channel partners. That is something which if you had this type of thing, collaboration going between banks, dealers, OEMs, then this problem won't be there, and you could actually command much better rates of inventory financing, which will be really lower cost for the channel partners, as also much more safety for the banks as far as banks money is concerned.
Yeah, yeah. We have a trusted collateral sitting
Yeah.
for banks to utilize when the supply chains come and transact on a shared manner. You create an assets, right? Those are collaterals, trusted collaterals. Whether it be an invoice, we have invoice financing solution live in one of the place.
uh,
It's a different domain, but there's a the invoice is on shared ledger, and both
uh,
buyer and supplier acknowledging to that. It's a
uh,
trusted collateral, right? Now you have
mm,
a banks can bank on that, right? So this is a very
yes.
common pattern where this kind of networks create a trusted collaterals, whether it's a inventory or it could be business documents, could be order, or even deep tier financing, right?
Yeah.
Multiple, you know, supplier of a supplier can also be financed if the OEM or big player backing it up, right? So
Absolutely.
we have seen a lot of business cases with this framework. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Yeah,
So,
Nabil.
Shamsa Rutvik is the one of the first investor, and he has made, I think, multiple rounds of investment in this startup. Just want to understand what kind of business potential he sees, and can you explain to him what are the points that you look at this startup that really needs to be brushed up? What are the area you think? The startup needs to really this one needs to work on so that they become more sustainable and they can be scaled up truly. What are the hurdle they needs to overcome, Shashank? And you can also ask
Oh,
the question to Ritvik. Yeah.
yeah, I think Rutvik did mention himself that the network effect comes in once you have enough,
Correct.
data. So the car runs faster if you have enough fuel. In this case, data is the fuel. And second, if you get more enterprises collaborating, then it is good. You can have insurance companies, and I'm talking only from auto perspective. I know this idea is such that it actually has a very positive thing on other businesses also. I can only talk about auto perspective. So I see a lot of potential here, and what I suggest is to the team, and I'm sure Rutvik knows it anyway, that some of the real problems which our OEMs are currently fighting with, and like one I mentioned was the inventory control, which banks and OEMs both are fighting for mutual benefit, both for the channel partners, for the banks, for us. It's one live case. So such live cases should be identified, and rather than explaining the the technicalities, which of course will come, any enterprises who invest in this will look at the details, but to showcase some of the test cases or the examples would be great. For example, if you can show something, how it is helping in supply chain integrations, or how it is going to lower the operating cost, how it's going to help in insurance fixing, premium fixing, how it's going to even help in some cases the design itself, the predictive, for example, maintenance, even predictive behavior of consumers if you have enough data. So those type of things would definitely make OEMs more interested, especially those OEMs who have not worked on it so much. So I can only say that the cases are so many. You can identify some of them and take it to the potential customers.
So
Great, great.
I'll
Thanks.
now check some of the questions from the audience. I would request the panel to stay back. So my first question comes from an anonymous person. He doesn't want to be named, and this is probably directed to the investors. I have a question regarding the stages VCs look for. I applied for few VCs regarding funding, but they refused asking for tractions of business. We have invented automatically chargeable EVs which do not require external sources to get charged. But VCs say that there are more advanced products in the market. I'm not sure which advanced product they are talking about. I have never seen any advanced technology than vehicle charge charging itself. So who all Ritvik and Shashank San can answer this.
So let me try first. I don't know a lot about the first gentleman who's asking the question, or the product that they're talking about. But in general, most of the time VCs do invest in companies where there is some form of early product and early demonstration of a product being used by someone comes in. So, for example, even when we invested in Coiner, at that point in time, they had an early version of blockchain product ready, and there were one or two customers who were ready to use that product, and there was a sense that there is a market for that. We as VCs most of the time uh, do look are not necessarily experts in the field in which the entrepreneurs are working, or even if we know about that field, I will never be as expert or as close to the field that this entrepreneur looks is working on. So a validation that whatever product that you've thought about, whatever idea that you've thought about, somebody is finding it useful and somebody is willing to pay for it, always helps in terms of de-risking the investment and makes it easier to seek an investment. So that's a very, very generic advice that I would give, without getting into the specifics of what that product is and what the competitive nature of that product is, because I don't know enough about it.
Yeah, Shashank sir, your thought.
Yeah, actually, I had this audio issue. What exactly was the question? Was the
The
observation?
question is that there's a gentleman, he applied for funding from a VCs. So he wants to understand what is the brightest stage for the VCs to come on board. Since when he went to the VC, they said that there are a lot of advanced technology already available, and the technology he was proposing to them is a self-charging technology for an EV.
Uh, Yeah, so I don't know whether I'm the right person to answer because I don't have so much experience of investing in the thing. But if the use case of such technologies can be demonstrated to the final customer, I think that's a good enough that's a good enough lever for people to get interested. Again, as Ritvik said, I'm not really sure what that exact idea was, but a self-charging EV looks very interesting to me. The idea itself, but I think some practical demonstrability or an application, possible practical application, will always interest. Companies and organizations who are looking to invest there. By the way, Nabil, I would like to repeat what I mentioned in the last time when we had this Adda startup thing, which is that Maruti Suzuki has a program called MAIL, which is on automobile, startups for such ideas. And we look at periodically every quarter, go through some of these ideas, both at the seeding stage and at the incubating stage, to see what ideas can interest us. And if for that gentleman, maybe he can put up this idea, and it's there on our website, mail, which is about mobility laboratories, what we call it. So we can look at that. It's just for information of everybody who might be
Anybody having an
in
idea?
in this ecosystem.
Yeah, great, Shashank.
Ritvik,
Definitely.
when you choose to fund a startup or any for any investor, what are the two three main points that you guys see, or that leads you to put your money into that company? Is it the potential of scalability, or what are the areas that you look at when you are investing in a startup?
So I think the single biggest thing is the market size and the potential size of the market. So it has to be a very, very large market. And not only that, you should be able to scale your business within that market within a 5 to 7 year time frame. So that is the single biggest criteria before you look at a product or you look at a business. That's the first. The second thing is the team which comes behind it. It has to be a team which, there is a lot of subjectivity in evaluating the team, but at least you should be able to get the confidence that this is the team which will be able to execute the idea, and not only execute, also be able to scale the company, hire talent, uh, s- acquire customers, all of those things alongside with just being able to build a product. So that's the second part which comes into the picture. The third part which is there is the economics of the business. Right? What is, there could be a business which could be an excellent business which can scale very, very fast, but from a financial or economics point of view may not be viable. So economic viability of the business is the third big important factor. And the fourth one is that the specific product and the specific idea which is being executed, can the founding team and the company build sustainable competitive advantage over the long period or not? So these are the 4 5 broad criteria that we look at. out there. But uh, that's but there is a lot of subjectivity involved because we invest, especially at the early stages. Many of these things are not known, and it is the best estimate of the investor as well as the founder, which ends up playing a big role.
What kind of market potential do you see for a company like Coin Earth or
See,
both
if you look
Shashank San
at
and Ritvik? Yeah, both of you
yeah, no,
can
so
answer.
for a company, for a company like Coinert, right? So if you look at the automobile industry, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry out there, and has been around for several years, and is going to be around for the next at least foreseeable future that I can think of. Now, if you have a multi-billion-dollar industry with various stakeholders, in it, and if you can bring all of them into the platform, even if you extract a small percentage of that pie, it becomes a very, very large and sizable business. And that's the way we look at it.
Yeah, Shashank San, your thought.
Yeah, so in fact, I agree with Rutvik because this industry is really large. The revenue pool is actually increasing for automobile because it is no longer just about the product, but about mobility, and we call that mobility as a service is a big area. The revenue pool is much larger, and therefore the profit pool is also much larger. And I think that is where data comes in because services of any type now, be it insurance or maintenance or after sales or subscription or whatever, even parking, for example, or P2P sharing of vehicles, it all depends on data. So I think the powerful idea that this that Coin Earth has has got many applicability, and therefore the possibilities of increasing on the revenue and the profit pool is very large, and we are just scratching the surface because it's only in very recent times that people and OEMs have started looking themselves as a mobility providers rather than just a product provider. And that, I believe, is the central thing which Coin Earth is actually going to address. And that it makes it extremely potent possibilities for this startup. So that to me is the sky is the limit, not just that $1 billion, but it's going to get bigger as we go along.
Before I come to you for final remarks, Shashank San, I'll again go back to Deep and understand from him what are the biggest challenges that you are facing when it comes to scaling up or enhancing applicability or acceptance of your business in the automobile industry or overall.
It's timing, Nabil, right? It's the right time where we are in, right? Like Shashank mentioned, right? Now they are mobility service provider. They're sitting on the data, right? I think we have hit the timing correctly now, where people are sitting on data. They wanted to see how we can, utilize this data. And the
I
second
asked the challenges
challenge
that you
would
are
be
facing. The
yes,
challenges that you
yes.
are facing.
Timing is the challenge where we resolve now, because if we have put it up in 3 4 years ago, it's going to be a different gameplay, right? Convincing multiple people in the network. The second is bringing these networks together and having enough value proposition to every party in the network. That is a key thing that we try to address. Why the parties has to come together? Everybody has to have their own share of value proposition. They just won't come and be the part of the network, right? The insurance provider should have something, as well as service provider should have some value proposition of it. Same with MG as well as consumer also. So we need to bring in more cases, business cases, as well as value proposition around all the key players in the network, right? And that's the key thing that builds the product. And we need network of people. That's the success of this product. You have more people in the network, that's where it gets successful. Okay. The major challenge is to bring in these network players, and coming to the same page and getting them onboarded with this idea is a major challenge for us.
Thank you, Deep. I'll come to you, Shashank San, for your final remark, including your, ranking, 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest on the parameters of scalability, adaptability, and business viability on these three parameters. How will you rate Why Not, and what would be your final comments?
Yeah, so on the rating part, I think I mentioned earlier quite high rating on applicability, on scalability, quite high rating. And I know this will be an area of great development. And I mentioned that in terms of both revenue and profit pool. So I would say about 8.5 out of 10 is what my rating is.
Thank you so much, Shashank. And any other comment, any other piece of advice that you would like to give them as they move forward in their business?
Yeah, so just one thing which I feel we haven't addressed in this brief session, which is that a lot of, as we have more enterprises getting into this collaboration, and one of the challenges is to get more enterprises and for consumers to share more data, for them to have that big advantage, whether it is inventory control or supply chain management, insurance, whatever, predictive, all. I think on the technical side, we need to see that the platform which is provided is sturdy enough and quick responding, because some of it is really online and consumers would like a very sharp. So while we have to see in the design of the platform that even you have to take into account the connectivity, as also the new tools of edge computing that we have. We need to leverage those to make it very quick in terms of data transfer being done, to make this system a robust one. That will give more confidence to the users and also to the OEMs. I can certainly talk of auto OEMs. It will give us more confidence in the basic capability of this blockchain system.
That's a great feedback, Shashank. In fact, last 3-4 years we've been working on scaling the product to a level
Yeah,
it is today. We are able to offer. So
that's good, Deep. I wish you the very best. So you are
thank
really
you.
doing a good job. You're dealing with it.
Thanks. Coming from you is really makes it a market validation. It's a great to
Yes,
get
yes.
right. It's hard to.
So Nabil, I think Nabil
Think
logged out. It appears.
yeah, he looks like he dropped out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
back.
coming back again. I think. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, there was some network disruption, so I'm back again. Thank you so much, Prashant San, Deep, and Ritvik for joining Eat Auto Startup Adda. And thank you all the audience for your questions. Due to the time constraint, we could not take all the questions, but I promise you, if you could send the questions in advance, that will help me plan the show better. So I request everybody to, you can directly write into me or put your questions in the comment box in advance so that I can include them during the session. I would also request you, if you have any suggestion for any particular startups, investors, or experts, you can directly write to me or put it in the comment box. I'll try to implement that. And stay tuned to ET Auto for latest news update and analysis on automobile or mobility industry. See you next week on Tuesday at 3 p.m. with a new set of innovators, investors, and experts from the industry. Till then, take care. Thank you so much. Goodbye.